Now, President Biden, Russian leader Vladimir Putin meeting in Geneva for a closed-door summit that's expected to last about 5 hours. Joining us now to discuss, Georgia Congressman Austin Scott. Congressman, thanks for coming on today. What are your expectations for today's meeting between Biden and Putin?
Well, I think there will be a lot of discussions out there. The thing that I worry about is candidly, President Biden's credibility in the meeting. He is the president of the United States, and certainly we want the president of the United States to come out of there with a successful meeting that helps, support America and our friends and our allies and people who share our interests and our values. Obviously, Russia is not a country that shares our interests and our values. And the one thing that I am, taken back at with, what Biden has done already is helping Russia with the pipeline from Russia to Europe for them to sell, fossil fuels to Europe, and then, at the same time canceling the pipeline in the United States, which would have helped, keep the cost of energy low inside the United States. So I have no idea what will happen in that conversation, but I am concerned that he's certainly got the potential to be pushed around in that meeting.
Yeah, you mentioned, you're referring to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline stemming from Germany to Russia, of course, a big financial win for those living in Russia. I want to talk to you about, though, some issues impacting Americans stateside financially. As we've seen prices going up, including the price of food and groceries, up by 0.8% in the month of May, up a record amount over the past year. We've also been following the rising inflation. What do you believe is really the cause behind these economic challenges we're facing?
Yeah, so we were starting to see some inflation before the last COVID relief package passed. They obviously jump-started it, and with how much money they pumped into the economy so fast. And at the same time, with the supply chain disruptions and other things that we've had from manufacturing over the years moving away from the United States, it's created a shortage of supply. But I will tell you, where the American consumers feel it the most, I think, is at the grocery store and at the gas pump. And so again, you go back to the decisions that are being made by the president. The Keystone Pipeline, canceling that, had a direct impact on fuel prices at the pump for every American out there. And then when you look at what's going on at the grocery store, we literally have crops in the United States today that will not be harvested because of the price at the farm. The American farmer on sweet corn, at least in Georgia, they're getting about 10 cents an ear, and the American consumer is paying about $1.10 an ear at the grocery store. So there's a big disconnect between what's happening at the farm and what's happening at the grocery store. President Trump and Secretary Perdue put in a program when produce prices were below the cost of harvest to actually harvest those products and deliver them to people who are hungry in the United States. It was a great program. The food box program delivered fresh fruits and vegetables to America's citizens, and unfortunately it was canceled simply because it was put in by the Trump administration.
You bring up a fascinating point. Again, when people show up to the grocery store, sometimes they don't think about where exactly this food is coming from. And of course, you mentioned the farmers who are doing the work to get the food to the shelves. And you also mentioned the American Rescue Plan, too. We've seen debt relief payments to minority farmers from the Agriculture Department. They're on hold now after a federal judge granted a restraining order in a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the program. Again, this was set in place during COVID. Now, you say that this is misleading and that debt relief actually hurts them rather than helps. When I get to this quote you sent out here, the narrative from the press on the issue is misleading. It's not debt relief for farmers who have been discriminated against. Again, this would be a financial benefit for minority farmers as opposed to non-minority farmers here. And I'll ask you, what's the correction that you believe is needed to accurately cover this story?
So the press has reported it as if it is black farmers who have been discriminated against. That's what the mainstream media has said, is this was a program that was developed for black farmers who have been discriminated against. The way the wording of the program is, it is all farmers who are not white, without regard for whether or not they are U.S. citizens or not, and with no proof of discrimination. So it is not about black farmers. It is not about farmers who have been discriminated against. The language as drafted in the legislation is literally, as long as you are not white, whatever you owe the USDA, whether you're a U.S. citizen or not, the USDA is going to pay you 120% of that. It is inherently un-American to do that. And if they want to do something for beginning young and small farmers, we need more farmers out there. I'll be the first to tell you, as someone who's from the South, that it is tough for a beginning young and small farmer without regard for the color of your skin or the color of your tractor. And so I'm glad that the judge put an injunction out there. If they had been able to get away with race as a determining factor on whether or not you did or did not receive benefits, then you could expect them to do the same thing with regard to home loans and student loans and other things pushing forward. And so I think the judge absolutely ruled the right way, and I appreciate the people that brought the lawsuit. But it was not debt relief for farmers who have been discriminated against.
All right, final question for you, Congressman. We've seen recently Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger saying that there are some serious questions about chain of custody for thousands of ballots in Fulton County. This goes back to the 2020 presidential election. He tweeted out the following, saying, "New revelations that Fulton County is unable to produce all ballot drop box transferred documents will be investigated thoroughly, as we have with other counties that failed to follow Georgia rules and regulations regarding drop boxes. This cannot continue." What's your reaction to this remark here? Do you see any continuing audits in the state of Georgia based on this new revelation the Secretary of State appears to be sharing?
Yeah, he's kind of a day late and a dollar short, isn't he, as we'd say from the South. I mean, for Raffensperger, I mean, this is a guy who recorded a private conversation with the President of the United States and then released it less than a week before the runoffs in Georgia with regard to our Senate races. So I'm glad that he's awake now and is going to follow through on this. But, you know, what I want the American citizens to know is that in Georgia, we have historically had about 200,000 absentee ballots cast in the state of Georgia. Some of them go for Democrats, some of them go for Republicans, and typically they have been very, very closely aligned with what the final outcome of the election was. And that's not just in presidential races, it's in congressional races and local races as well. This last election cycle, we had 1.2 million absentee ballots cast. So we went from 200,000 to 1.2 million absentee ballots cast. And so the chain of custody of those ballots from, you know, the voter, the person who actually cast the vote, and the registrars where the votes is counted is extremely important. And if that chain of custody is broken, then you've got an integrity gap in the count of the ballots. And so I'm glad that he's going to investigate it. I will tell you, and I know some people don't want to hear this, but the election is not going to be overturned. I do think that the new Georgia law will help make sure that we maintain the integrity of that ballot from the point of voter to the board of registration where the ballots are counted. But I'm glad Secretary Raffensperger thinks there's something that needs to be investigated, and I wish that he had not recorded a private conversation with the President of the United States and released that less than 7 days before the Senate runoffs in the state of Georgia.